All right, with our categories assignment, I'll read out the category, and then you will give me all 5 terms or how many ever terms there are underneath that particular category. We already did the first one, 5 keys together. Key concepts: culture, functional integration, power, social structure, social action. The next one, changes created by the Industrial Revolution. Who wants to take that one? All right, Ms. Jenna.
Is that the category?
Yes.
Then I'm all messed up. Give me a second.
Changes created by the Industrial Revolution. Ms. Haley?
Urbanization, religion loses control, new industries and technologies, and social problems.
Social problems. We got one more. Anybody figure out the last one, Cal? Social order preordained by God. So you got the question mark there. If you go back to, like medieval European cultures, you had the divine right of the kings, this power being passed down from generation to generation. And so that's being challenged with these new democratic type of ideals that come on the scene with the Industrial Revolution there. Okay, so you got 5 of them there. Stanford Prison Experiment. Ms. Engel?
Said guards, students, experimental bias, the whole, and then Philip.
Very good. Got experimental bias in there. Zimbardo got too close, right? Wasn't objective with his study. Sultans of Sociology got 5. Cal, you're pretty good with those?
Said Comp, Durkheim, Marx, Weber, Spencer.
Very good. So you got your 5. Comp, Durkheim, Spencer, Marx, and Weber. The TED Talk, Are We in Control of Our Own Decisions? Ms. Jensen, you got any of those?
Rome with coffee, Paris, and ugly jury.
Yep, and we got one more. Clayton? Organ donations, right? The default, leaving the box unchecked. Magic of the washing machine. Ms. Kantz?
The bulb and the fire people.
Yep, we got those 2 to get us started. Add to that. Clayton?
Wash line.
Yep.
Books.
Yep. Yep. One more.
Airline.
It's the airline. Very good. Yep. You guys know what books is on there, right? We had a conversation yesterday afternoon. Exactly. And literacy. It's all about literacy. I mean, the book represents not just the cat in the hat. It's about literacy. Literacy is huge. Reading is huge. He doesn't get it. Exactly. Theoretical perspectives. We got 3 to finish up. Ms. Harrison.
Functionalism, symbolic interactionism,
Mm-hmm. And conflict theory. Very good. Anybody get them all right?
Where does United States?
I forgot to take United States out of there. I apologize.
Okay.
So that was an extra outlier there. So apart from that one, anybody get them all right? Very good. You can feel good about yourself. All right, let's take out a sheet of notebook paper. We're going to take a few notes today on a short overview of research methods. So we're going to look at 6 of them today, and a couple of these we're going to break down a little bit more depth next week. And then we're going to add to these 6 as well. We're going to add the correlation research method and the ethnography next week as well. But today, just a general overview of 6 research methods that are commonly used in sociological research. So there they are. Survey research, content analysis, archival data, experimentation, unobtrusive observation, and field observation. Which one of those is depicted in the top right-hand corner? What type of research would that be? Haley? Survey research. Very good. What is the most common research method of all the research methods? Most commonly used research method. Ms. Orrs? The survey again. Very good. Which one of those is the only one that can identify a cause and effect relationship between two variables? Only one to identify cause and effect. The others two can get a lot of information, but not necessarily say cause and effect. Ms. Bowman? Experimentation, right? That's you have to perform an experiment in order for you to say that this causes this. Okay? Let's go ahead and break each one of them down just a little bit. Survey research, there's different forms of survey research. You've probably been exposed to quite a few of them. I said earlier this morning we're going to get exposed to a big one later this year where all Americans are going to be asked to fill out this one. Anybody know what that would be?
Election.
The election can be kind of an aspect of a survey, I guess, but what is it? The census, right? So every 10 years you got the census, and you get a lot of information. Sociologists, really utilize the census data quite a bit. Okay. Like I said before, it's the most commonly used of all the research methods. We've got 4 specific types of survey research. You got mailed questionnaires, you got face-to-face interviews, phone interviews, and focus group research. Think about face-to-face interviews for a second. Nice to be in the same context, the person that is interviewing you. However, it does create some scenarios in which you can get some false information, especially if the person is of the equivalent age. You may have a tendency to skew your responses to make sure that you look as positive as possible, right? We want to maintain our self-esteem, self-concept, like we talked about before, right? Especially if it's of the opposite sex, meaning that a male is most likely to skew the response if it's a female interviewer, and a female is most likely to skew the response if it happens to be a male interviewer. Phone interviews are used quite often as well. One reason why I don't answer my phone anymore. There's an actual example on some bad survey research using phone interviews. It goes back to the 1930s and 1940s. These researchers were wanting information about the American population, so they went to the DMV, and they got phone numbers there from people that registered their cars at the DMV, right? So they thought that they were, doing a good survey of the entirety of the American population. In that 1930s, 1940s, the type of people are registering their cars.
Rich.
Yep, rich people. And that point in time, it happened to be a lot of white people there. So very biased in their research, right? So you got to make sure that you have a representative sample whenever you do your research, whether it be a survey research or something else. And the last one is focus group research. We're going to break that one down just a little bit. Focus group research is where you get randomly selected small group of people, and then you'll ask them a series of questions or present them with the object. A lot of times it's used by marketing agencies or businesses. Present them with your product and then get their the response, their thoughts concerning that particular product or the way that it's being advertised. And then you can use that information to better put out your product in a more buyable, purchasable way, something like that, right? So again, they're used quite often with marketing agencies. Have you guys seen this commercial? It's been a few years. Is it a cell phone company? I can't remember what it is, but they did a focus group research on like preschoolers, kindergartners, and had some interesting responses. Sometimes you get some interesting information through survey research, some very valuable information that you wouldn't anticipate. So this is an example of that.
I saw a thing, actually, a study that said speaking in front of a crowd is considered the #1 fear of the average person. I found that amazing. Number 2 was death. Death is number 2? This means to the average person, if you have to be at a funeral, you would rather be in the casket than doing the eulogy.
So it's an interesting way of thinking about survey research. This is an example of focus group research.
Okay, so which one tasted better?
Steve.
Yeah, the guy.
With Lisa, I only tasted peanut butter and chocolate.
Lisa had just eaten a peanut butter cup.
But with Steve, I tasted something more. It was peanut butter and Snickers.
You're right.
Yeah.
Steve had just eaten Snickers peanut butter squared.
Steve was delicious. Yeah. I'd love another taste.
Oh, certainly.
both squares, please.
If you like peanut butter and chocolate, you'll love peanut.
Love that. Eat
Okay.
both squares, please. So the focus group here would be the sharks that eat people that way. Okay. All right. So that's survey research. Again, most widely used, a good test question there. Okay. So keep that in the back of your mind. Content analysis. Survey research is really an indirect form of research as well. I didn't put that next to the survey there. You have direct and indirect. Really, the direct form of research that we have would probably be more towards like an ethnography or maybe an experiment. But we'll get to ethnography a little bit more next week. But content analysis is kind of like a book report. It's a systematic study of past written documents, and it has a tendency to be limiting. So when it says book report, in today's age, we use social media quite a bit more, right? So you could actually do content analysis of people's Twitter accounts, Twitter feeds, right? And what we're looking for is really trends with content analysis. So we'll see how they can be applied. Apologize, like you had to read all that. Probably not your favorite video. A lot of reading involved there. No.
Yeah, they could just dumb pictures.
So again, it is a little bit subjective. I want to reiterate that at the end. The researcher trying to categorize all those things. Where do those categories come from? Well, the researcher is going to come up with that, and that can be a little bit subjective, as well as the sources that the researchers are exposing themselves to can create some subjectivity there. Okay. Archival data, the third one, indirect form of research as well. Nearly all businesses and college campuses have archives, and so what you're going to do is dive into that information that you can acquire from those archives and try to come up with some type of analysis. Just finished reading a book called Grit. I'm not sure if I've referenced it in here. I've talked about it in psychology class a couple times already. But one of the questions that they pose is students having grit, displaying enough grit to finish college, because there's a lot of people that start college and they never get to the end, right? They never get to that degree day, right? So you could use archival data to look at the background information of these particular students and try to figure out some type of, maybe correlation, link between the type of background of that student and the likelihood of them succeeding, right? Maybe something about their socioeconomic background that can contribute to that. Okay. Experimentation, we're going to break this one down in quite a bit more depth next week. But essentially you have two groups and you have two types of variables in an experiment. You're trying to test a hypothesis, and through that process you got to come up with two groups to see if what you're testing is actually working, because you're going to have some type of baseline. So you have an experimental group and you have a control group. The experimental group is exposed to the independent variable, and once they're exposed to it, you see if it has any effect on them. Okay. So the control group, they're not exposed to the independent variable. Sometimes they're given nothing, right? Other times they're given, in like a lot of times medical trials, a placebo. You may write placebo out to the side of control group. Placebo, placebo. And so it's an innate subject or an inanimate object, like a sugar pill. So you take it as if they don't know it's a sugar pill. They think they're actually a part of the experimental group.
So like, oh God, my limbs are growing.
And so they can, I guess if that's part of the trial. But it controls for one's expectation. Sound good? Because when you expect to receive something, your body does some crazy things sometimes, and it will actually improve itself if you think it's like medicine that way. Okay. So you got the two groups, experimental group, control group, and then you got the two variables, independent variable and dependent variable. I use two M-words, one-word definitions, to differentiate independent and dependent variable. I'd like you to memorize them as well. For independent variable, I said that the M-word is manipulated, because you're going to vary that. You can increase it and decrease it to see its effect on the experimental group. Manipulated. And then the M word for the dependent variable, it comes at the end of the experiment. You're measuring the dependent variable, its effect on the experimental group, those that have been exposed. Sound good? So measure for dependent variable, and then manipulated for independent variable. Okay. Give you a couple different examples, just to think off the top of your head. Say that there's researchers that's trying to do a study on the effects of exercise on test scores. And so they got two different groups. Let's say one group is in this particular room, and you have to do, jumping jacks for, 5 minutes. And then there's another group in the other room, and they're just sitting there. They're doing nothing, right? And then at the end of the 5 minutes, then both are given some type of memory test. And then the tests are, of course, graded and scored. So in that particular scenario, which one is the experimental group? Jumping jack group. Which one's the control group? The group that doesn't do anything on the other side. What's the independent variable? Jumping jacks. Exactly, the exercise. And then the dependent variable? Their scores. The scores on the test there. Okay? I'll go back and give you another variation concerning this in a second. Unobtrusive observation. So this is like detective work. So a sociologist acts like a detective. So some type of social event occurs, and then they're going to show up, and they're probably going to approach it a little bit different from a way like a crime scene investigator would look at it. They're probably going to think about it from, the sociological perspective, using the different sociological theories to analyze and interpret the evidence that they come across. Sound good? And the last one is field and naturalist observation. Field observation, naturalist observation. We're going to use those in here. We're going to use those terms interchangeably. Field observation, naturalist observation. So we do a naturalist observation study in psychology class, where I ask the students to go out and to pick a particular topic, and they're supposed to observe what goes on in that particular environment. Some of that you may have seen over the past semester. They looked at people using their cell phones in the hallways in passing periods. A lot of them did that. Some of them in the past, this is before the law really got strict, was how many people were driving down the road on a particular street or at the stoplight up by the courthouse would check their cell phones, right, while they're in the car. Others would do a naturalistic field observation on just speeding up Lake Road because they had this radar, right? So they've observed that. So those are different variations of naturalist observation, but essentially what you're doing is you're looking at the subject in its natural setting, so it's not skewing their behavior. Your presence is unknown. If your presence is known, then that's going to affect the outcome, right? So you want to stay away from that. That's what we'll call the Hawthorne effect, and we'll get to that a little bit more next week. Let's go one more video to finish up. I may give you one more experiment to consider.
Have you noticed that Howard can take any topic and use it to remind you that he went to space?
Interesting hypothesis. Let's apply the scientific method. Perform an experiment.
Okay. Hey, Howard, any thoughts on where we should get dinner?
Anywhere but the space station. And on a good day, dinner was a bag full of meatloaf. But hey, you don't go there for the food, you go there for the view.
Fascinating. Let me see if I can duplicate the result.
Howard, I've always thought the lemon was an underrated fruit. Care to weigh in?
Not really.
Oh well.
You know, people say the Soyuz capsule is a lemon, but...
Hey, that baby got me to space and back.
Alright, so I don't really know how to analyze. There's not really an experimental group and a control group in this one, right? It's really just Leonard, right? He's kind of like the experimental group. What's the independent variable? Well, it won't be a response. That would be the dependent variable. It's measured, right? It'd be like any random question, right? Would be the independent variable there. And so, is he able to spin it to make it associated with International Space Station? Is that what it was he was referencing there? Okay. So, interesting way of looking at the experiment there. Does anybody have any questions about these six research methods? Yes.
Can you go back to the unobtrusive?
We gotta have everything written down, don't we?
Yeah, I do.
There were only 2 things written.
See, that would be an interesting study. How many students have to have everything written down from the board when it comes to notes?
Based on their OCD, I guess.
And then we could do a study on test scores related to,
I write
their ability
big
to write
ideas
everything down.
and whatever my brain connects it to.
That's the idea. We want you to flex your mental muscles.